Growth Pod is brought to you by Genero, a leading growth agency in the Nordics. We interview marketing experts, business leaders, and entrepreneurs to uncover the stories and strategies behind profitable growth.
Welcome back to another episode. Today's guest is Gauthier Van Malderen, who is an entrepreneur and the CEO and co-founder of Perlego. Perlego is a London-based startup on a mission to make educational content more affordable. They've raised over $65 million to build a digital online library of academic and professional textbooks. The platform gives students all over the world unlimited access to over 1 million textbooks for a small monthly fee. Welcome to the show, Gauthier.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So let's start with some background. How did you end up founding this company?
Yeah, so I'm from Belgium originally, but I did my undergrad degree abroad. And basically when I was at university, I was seeing that a lot of students were using pirated websites to download PDF versions of books. But then also they'd buy a lot of secondhand books as well on the local campus bookstore. And basically it was a personal pain point of mine, which just like content was so expensive, right? I'd buy like a statistics book and it cost me €200. I'd only read 2-3 chapters of the book and never read it again. So the business really came out of a personal pain point of mine, which was expensive price of textbooks. And as an interesting kind of macro trend, textbook prices have actually increased by 1,022% since 1982, or, over 4 times the rate of inflation. So massive problem on the student side. And then when I was looking a bit on the publisher side, this was actually my dissertation for my master's. I noticed that all the publishers, they were losing a lot of revenue due to the secondhand book market. And then, of course, they were losing a huge amount of revenue due to piracy. So on the student side, big problem where they find the content too expensive. They no longer want to access their content. They just want to subscribe to their content. On the publisher side, only monetizing about 36% of their market, losing, a chunk of around 40% to piracy, and then the rest to the secondhand book market. So big problem on their side as well. And then the solution we've built is an aggregator of content from all the publishers and a simple subscription service where for the price of a single book, you get access to all your content.
So it sounds like you were really the right person at the right place at the right time to have this insight and then kind of take advantage of it. But how were you able to build, where did you start, right? Because I'm guessing you didn't have a lot of experience in publishing, how to build relationships with these big publishing companies. How did you get started?
Oh, it's really tough. I've got a joke, like when I first met some of the executives in big publishing houses, they would sort of be like, man, you know nothing about publishing. You've never worked here. Let me teach you how it's going to be done. So on paper, I made no sense, right? I had no publishing background, never built a high scale startup, had never raised venture capital, but I think I was incredibly passionate. And sort of the first 6 months was all about validating the supply. Could I actually bring some publishers on? And then we raised an initial, I think it was an £800,000 round, so $1 million at the time, to then start building the product and continue to build that flywheel effect. So I'm always incredibly grateful for, early publishers like Pacti Publishing, or there's some other great names like Casemate. These people literally just were like, oh, I backed this young guy. He's passionate about it. Let's give it a go. It might all fail. But so I'm eternally grateful for them entrusting their content when I had no idea what I was doing.
You mentioned a passion. I also heard you talk about that in a previous interview. Do you think that was kind of key because you didn't have the experience, you didn't have the track record, but they could see that you've experienced a real problem that you want to solve for other people as well? Do you think that was key, and that's something that other entrepreneurs could really take to heart? Is that focusing on something that you're passionate about?
Look, I think ultimately the entrepreneur's game is a very tough game, and you have to be incredibly passionate and love what you do. I get knocked down every day, right? And in the beginning of my career, it really came to heart. And then now I realize it's just part of the process. And it's so satisfying, I've had so many no's that have become yeses. It's the most important thing because without it, I think you just give up. Because I often joke as well, one of the I think it was a good thing that I didn't have publishing experience. I call it the ignorance of not knowing what you're doing. And because honestly, if I had been in publishing for 10 years, I probably would have been like, this is impossible. It's not achievable. Whilst I didn't know all these complications and these, how difficult it is. But I had the passion and motivation to do it. So yeah, I think that helped quite a bit.
And so you mentioned everything was a lot more difficult than you had anticipated. What were some of those early challenges, early struggles that you faced early on? And how did you go about solving them?
I would think about it in like maybe three layers. One, on the fundraising, there are very few successful edtech companies in Europe. There are a few now in the US, but edtech wasn't sexy in 2017 when I started Perlego. Now it's become very much at the forefront, and there's lots of venture capital going into it. So that was one. Fundraising was tough. Two, I think the publishers at the beginning, they were very scared of a solution like Perlego, right? Because this is an industry in massive decline. Revenues have gone down, by over 44% in the last 4 years alone. How do you build a compelling proposition which helps the publishers and the student? So in the beginning, it was around what are the pain points for the publishers that Perlego can solve? And it's things like providing them data in terms of consumption trends. It's things like helping them against piracy, and then ensuring that they get a recurring revenue line in terms of their revenues, which has helped the industry, join our company. And then the other thing I think internally is, hiring great people. That also, as a founder, you're basically just getting money, setting the vision, and hiring great talent. And when it's in the early days, I've had some amazing people join us, but I truly believe like it's the team that makes the whole difference. So passion in the team is what is correlated to a startup success. So if I was an early stage investor, I would only just focus on the team. The market always changes, the business half the time changes, but if you've got a strong team, they'll navigate the choppy waters and find their flow.
So how did you go about in the beginning, before you had any track record, you hadn't raised a lot of funding, there was basically now proof of concept. How did you get smart, ambitious, hardworking people to join Perlego and help you realize the vision?
Yeah, so ultimately it's you're pitching and you're selling the vision, and they have to believe in what it can become. And, the majority of the people who joined in the early days were relatively young and fresh out of their careers, starting their careers. And so, there was less financial risk for them if it failed. And there's some of our best people today, but it was people who were just incredibly ambitious, incredibly passionate about our mission to make educational content more affordable, and people who are happy to learn on the go and have grown so well in our kind of 5-6 year history.
So it seems like storytelling was really key. And I guess that's a skill that you've had or at least honed over the years. You also mentioned in our interview that you have a co-founder who's very good on the technical side. That's not your area of expertise. Do you think it's really important that you have a founding team with complementary skill sets? How do you think about that?
You've said it. Yeah, you said it completely correctly. Again, I think, upon reflection, the next company I will do in the future, I would have 4 co-founders and complementary skill sets in all. So Matt Davis, who's our CTO and co-founder, is so good technically, and I'm very good at selling the vision and doing sales and, bringing a team together. So he was busy building the product and the tech whilst I was busy, getting the money, building the team, and getting the publishers, which allowed me to kind of completely entrust him and know that was happening whilst I was building. So you got to divide and conquer in the early days, and the more complementary skill sets, views on life, but also I'd say in terms of personalities, gives a lot of reassurance to investors, but also to people who join the company.
You mentioned 4 co-founders. Are there any specific skill sets that you had in mind that you'd want from the very beginning?
Yeah, I'd say having a heavyweight design in the beginning would be very, very helpful. Historically, we didn't really design our products before we built them, which was very costly. And so now what I'd say is design, test, ask your user base before building, and you ship products which are, which will be used more. And that would mean a faster cycle, a better feedback loop, and then as a result, more efficiencies in how you build software engineering. So great designer, great technical co-founder. And then I think another person that would really be good in the early days is what I call like ops, finance, people, sort of that COO bucket, which is the day-to-day, sort of running of the company.
Got it. And just, I'd be curious. I guess we have some listeners to this podcast who are people starting out, people considering becoming entrepreneurs. You've just listed a bunch of different skill sets. Would you typically recommend that people would join fast-growing early stage startups like Perlego before kind of embarking on that journey for yourself, or how do you think about that? You didn't take that route, but what do you typically recommend to young people?
Yeah, I'd say in the early stages of your career, you should be a generalist that can do a bit of everything. So from jumping into finance to sorting out maybe a fire with, I'm just making this up, but you need to set up the first contract to hire people, etc. And then as you scale and as you grow, you need to go into specialization. So going from the generalist into specialist, especially at the early days. Now, if after 5-10 years in your career and you've become a generalist or you've become a specialist, then you join a later stage company and you specialize in that. So in the beginning, we did everything from marketing to finance, and now we've got a head of marketing, head of finance. So early days is much more become a generalist, and then Series B and onwards, you become a specialist. So it depends on what your appetite is. But join an early stage company, which allows you to see all sides of the company. You can do lots of things. And then from that, you'll see what you love doing and you'll naturally find your fit as the company scales or as another company at a later stage.
All right, that's really good advice. Going back to the early days of Perlego, was there kind of like an inflection point when things really started taking off and you realized, wow, we have a working concept. This is actually going to work out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there was never like a aha moment, and I think it was always compounding and delivering, 5, 10, 12, 15% month-to-month growth. I think a big moment for us, a really important moment in our history was COVID-19. And COVID-19 really accelerated all variables in our business. So because all the bookstores were closed, publishers gave us more content, and that meant our content went up quite a lot. Secondly, a lot of universities and professors that historically were kind of against using digital solutions started using things like Perlego because they were like, we have to. Very similar to remote work, people now do that, and that kind of accelerated the digital consumption of content in education. And then I think the third is on our university business. We have quite a big university business where universities buy Perlego in bulk for their students. That was also huge because a lot of universities said, hey, our libraries are shut. We need to now offer hybrid models where you could, read online, but also go into the library. And so that helped us. So for me, a big moment was, COVID-19, the acceleration of the use of digital solutions on the content side, university side, and with our consumers as well.
Was there anything particular that you did as this kind of opportunity fell into your lap, or was it just a matter of trying to keep up the pace of the growth? Or did you position yourself in any way or really focus the entire company on the fact that this is a limited window opportunity? We really have to go all in. How do you think about that opportunity?
Yeah, it was a really scary time, right? Because there was so much uncertainty in the world was what was happening, etc. So I think our company really rallied towards the mission of, for a lot of students, they had to do their exams. It was super stressful. So initially we offered free access for 6 weeks to lots of universities, etc., because everyone was really in a pickle and struggling. We said, don't worry, it's on us, and our investors backed that as well. And then what we found is people just loved the product, loved the value proposition, that they became paying users after. So for us, it was really a stressful period, rallying together. We saw a lot of growth, and then I think it was quite motivating because, in COVID times, a lot of people were quite lonely and felt a bit secluded. And so we were all working towards this common mission, which, I think a lot of people found very exciting.
You mentioned that basically you got a lot of people to try the product, some of them for free. They loved it so much, they decided to start paying for it. Has that kind of been your growth strategy, given outside of COVID? Or how have you thought about growth in general?
Yeah, so in terms of the growth levers in the business, we have about 4 or 5 different levers. Historically, we offered a 2-week free trial. And, in the early days, Perlego didn't have a strong brand awareness. People hadn't heard of us. And so we'd offer a 2-week free trial and they'd be like, wow, this is so good. I'm going to subscribe because they get 1 million books for €12 a month. Now, however, as the product and the brand awareness is becoming stronger, we have to offer less free trials or less referrals, etc. We don't have to give as many freebies. And so what we're trying to do is build more virality into our product. So the ability to share specific snippets of a book with friends. You can now aggregate all your core learning materials. So you can upload PDFs. You can link G Drive files. You can, as a professor, share your workspace with your students. So virality is becoming an important growth lever. And then for us, SEO, so search engine optimization, where what we notice is students type the name of the book and then a free PDF. Well, Perlego started to build that. And today, I think we do over 4 million unique visitors a month of people looking for the content for free. So this is a very low customer acquisition cost way to acquire customers, drive brand awareness, and share your product. So the way I think about it is more virality, more SEO, and more, just building a great product, and that you'll have word of mouth and a good K factor.
It sounds like you've found this really effective, cost-effective playbook where you don't have to spend a ton on customer acquisition. Was that kind of intentional, the factors, the levers that you outlined here, or is that kind of just through a process of trial and error you've kind of discovered what works for you?
Trial and error, and then I think also the difficult balance sometimes is short-term revenue against long-term revenue. So SEO takes, you can invest in it 6 months ago and you'll see the translation of your efforts 6 months later. So sometimes what we do, in very big periods, so in September, it's a very big period for us. We'll spend a bit of paid marketing to accelerate as well our growth. But I think, trial and error, seeing what's fit, see what's, works, and then the balance about short-term revenue growth levers and long-term sustainable growth levers, so you can balance both.
Has that been a challenge? I mentioned at the beginning, you guys raised over 60 million. Investors, VC, venture capital investors, companies typically want to see a lot of growth. Has that been a challenge, kind of navigating that and explaining the need to make these long-term investments and keeping costs down, or no?
Yeah. So the world's changed quite a lot, as you know, in the last year. Before, it was growth at all costs, and you could burn as much cash as you liked, and there was a lot of available financing options in the market. I think, on the $75 million we've raised to date, we've been very lean. However, now the kind of feeling in the market is it's about financial discipline, sustainable growth. So instead of growing 200%, it's better to grow 100%, but with much healthier burn and a much healthier unit economics than you would have 3 years ago. Now, my challenge is we want to continue to grow, continue to build this scale player, because if you don't scale fast enough, then also publishers are like, hey, it's cute, you have 1 million subscribers, but we want 25 million subscribers. So you need to find that balance. And so the way we think about profitability is based on specific channels, specific markets, and then in some markets you invest more and others less.
Speaking of markets, you mentioned in another interview I saw the need. I think that was for a company, audience in the Netherlands. The need to be internationally minded from the start because the domestic markets can be very small. So I guess that's been the strategy for Perlego. What kind of challenges have you seen with expanding internationally? Is there anything kind of unforeseen?
Yeah. So being Belgian originally, I think you got to go global to build a huge company. And I think our pain point resonates with so many people. In terms of international, of course, different languages and different markets are very important. So, for example, we now offer Perlego in French, German, Italian, Spanish. And so you do need the local content coverage, but you have quite a lot of complexities in internationalization. So, for example, in some countries, you don't even use your credit card. You do the billing through your telco provider. So it's about building a global brand, a global company, a global product, but then being local, having local adaptations of your specific, payment methods, language methods, content in those markets. Today we have users in 191 different countries, which is really exciting for us and just shows how it's such a big market and the pain point resonates with so many users. But of course, you can't do everything, right? So it's about focus. So some areas like rest of the world, China, we don't invest in today because if you spread yourself too thin, you're not going to please anyone. So it's about attacking specific markets, cracking those, and then moving on.
I think that's really cool. There's probably not that many startups in the world who can say that they have users in 190, which basically like all over the world.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's awesome. You mentioned you're going to build a global brand. Is there any efforts that you have to do towards branding when you're entering a new market? Or like you said, is it just about getting people to try the product, maybe for free, and they just love it, they understand the value proposition, and they start using it? Or how do you think about like building trust in new markets?
Yeah, so the way we think about markets is based on the content you need for the students or content coverage. And when you enter a market, typically in the early days, your content coverage might be below 30%. So by content coverage means if you have 10 books, we have 3 out of your 10 books. And so initially what we do is we offer subscription discounts on our price. So let's just give an example. In the Nordics, our optimal price point might be 20 euros a month or 15 euros a month. But today we offer it at 10 euros a month. You offer it at a better price because you don't have all the content yet. You then in turn also drive local brand awareness campaigns through partnerships. So you could partner with a big bank that would offer Perlego for free and they buy the accounts up front as a brand awareness campaign. And by doing so, you start to build brand awareness. As your content increases, then you can remove the discounting on price. You can offer a better price. And after 6-7 months, your SEO efforts also come into play. So the way I see it is you enter a market, you're basically almost offering good discounts and you're using paid marketing and brand awareness to subsidize the unit economics to get more content and drive profitability after that. And that process takes anywhere between 6 months to 2 years, depending on how fast you bring on the content.
Got it. Okay. So it seems like you guys have really developed a quite robust methodology and understanding in terms of timing and efforts, what it takes to crack a new market.
Exactly. And then what's interesting is, we have of our million titles, 1.1 million, I'd say about 900,000 are in English. So what you do see as well is sensitivity in different segments. So humanities, they read 10, 12 books, whilst in economics, you might read 2-3 books. So today we don't do that, but you could also see some nice consumption trends where you have better product market fit in some cohorts of content.
You mentioned earlier the importance of not spreading yourself too thin. And I guess it's always a challenge. Focus about saying no, that's always really difficult. You raise a bunch of money, maybe there's that kind of desire to want to do a lot of different things. You get a lot of feedback from customers. How have you guys thought about focus and not going into down all the different paths that you could go down with Perlego?
It's a really difficult thing because there's so many hot, exciting opportunities that come your way. For example, AI is one of them right now. We've put resources to, we've put quite a few people on exploring it. Fundamentally, focus has to go about, for me, the focus is really on 2 main verticals, which is which markets we enter and which products we deliver. And I've learned in my career now that less is more. It's better to do 3 things really well than to do 8 things half-heartedly. And so we set ourselves like a 3, 4, 5-year vision, and then we build the building blocks, which are the most critical pieces for our users, for our publishers, and for our universities. What are the things they want the most? So for example, things like this year was we offered text-to-speech, the ability to listen to all your content on the go. Another big thing we're building, for example, is learning tools. So how can you study better, smarter, and more efficiently within the content? So adding things like reference generators, timers. So I think my one piece of advice is, you say you're going to do 10 things. The max you can do as a company is maybe 3, 4 in a year, and keep it simple and do less. Really, less is more.
And how do you think about, you mentioned AI, that's obviously been something very, very hot and very impactful recently that's come up. How do you distinguish, like, let's say, an AI opportunity that may truly revolutionize what you're trying to do versus something that's
Yeah,
just an interesting opportunity but should be discarded? Do you have a framework
yeah,
for identifying opportunities versus kind of noise?
yeah, totally. So look, it's this is going to be revolutionary in terms of all business functions. The way I see it is Perlego today has 17 different applications of AI. Some of them are internal, driving more efficiencies of your existing team. So, for example, um, can AI help us identify the best books, which drives a recommendation algorithm, and we focus our paid efforts on the best sellers. The second is in terms of improving your product development. So I believe AI should be an accelerator of your vision, but should not be a replacement of your vision. So I've always had the dream of the ability to create flashcards, have a virtual tutor in your book where you can ask questions within the book. This is so exciting, and AI makes it so much more powerful. So what of those 17 applications, 2 to 5 of them are internal, driving more efficiencies. And then the rest are how can we drive better learning outcomes for our students through better products. Now, it's important. You don't want to help students cheat or, that they can write their whole essay and text. So it's really important that you work with faculty, professors, and publishers to ensure that you build an ecosystem that everyone enjoys. Because AI could also be very alienating and very negative, especially in education. So we've got to be very careful on how we think about it and make sure it's positive and not negative.
In addition to AI, is there anything kind of on the horizon that you're particularly excited about? New markets, new products? What kind of gets you excited now? Like 5 years, I think, into running the company.
Yeah, so I think if we think about our initial vision, kind of that multi-publisher subscription service, some people call us the Netflix or Spotify for books, really becoming global. So last month we relaunched Spain as a language, which is really exciting for us. So I'm very excited about our international efforts. But I'm also really excited about some of the products we're building. So, for example, one of my big dreams is imagine you're reading and you could collaborate with your professors and your students on the book. You can see what they're highlighting, what they're annotating. You go from a one-sided reading experience to a multi-sided reading experience, and you can collaborate and learn together. So that's something we're working on, which is very exciting. So yeah, that's, I'm excited about markets, especially Spain, LATAM, and Europe, like Germany. And then very excited about collaboration and some of our product features that are coming out in the next few months.
So it sounds like you have a pretty good idea of what you want to build, right? How do you
Yeah,
maintain that kind of like rapid cadence of getting new products to market, launching new markets? When the company grows, I guess you're over 100 people now, becomes more
yeah.
process oriented, more mature, more bureaucracy. How do you, as a founder, do you think about that? And so how do you make sure that there kind of stays that kind of scrappy, dynamic approach maintains within the company?
Yeah, so I think the way I see it is you have the mothership, which is the things that are working, and you have to make sure they work really well and you continue to improve on that. And there you can't be scrappy because you have hundreds of thousands using your product and you need to make sure that you continue to deliver a great experience. So that is like core, very important. You're improving, maintaining, but you're not doing anything disruptive. And then on the other side, you have more your satellite opportunities like AI, where 3-4 people are working on that. Once they see it works, they test it with users, and then they bring it into the Perlego core. So for me, that's how you can continue to have agility with people working, alongside the vision in our tracks, but then you also maintain the core things that are working really well.
Does that kind of require having almost two different cultures within the same company and two people working with different mindsets, different timeframes? Or how do you think about that?
Yeah, so the way we've organized the company is what I call in the tribe structure. So we have tribe university, tribe consumer, tribe learning, and then a tribe publisher. And so everyone is working towards a common goal within their tribe. So say tribe publishers is how can we build an amazing experience for our publishers from onboarding to data, etc. And then people, what they do is they might research specific things that they can bring in their tribe. So the culture remains pretty much the same, but what we try to do is ship as fast as possible, learn from our users, and then improve and not brainstorm for 6 months, ship something that isn't being used. Because I think the best products are iterative developments instead of one big development.
Final question, Gauthier. Since you mentioned you guys are building, or at least been branded as the Spotify or Netflix for books or textbooks, what are some of your favorite books that you've used to support you in your journey as an entrepreneur and CEO?
Yeah, great question. My two favorite books is the founding story of Nike, Shoe Dog. It's such a great story, so inspiring. I think it's from the same, it's a ghostwriter, and that ghostwriter wrote Open by Andrew Agassi as well. And also the Harry, the autobiography of Harry Spare. But that Shoe Dog story is such an inspiring story because Nike's such a big brand now, but actually they had some really tough days. They were going against like massive, in basketball, like Converse, and they were tiny. So that was a really, really inspiring one. And then one I've been reading recently on Perlego as well, which is quite good, is Blue Ocean Strategy. It's the book used by every consultant. I think it's a good framework and a good, I quite enjoy reading that one. But yeah, my favorite book is Shoe Dog, definitely from miles from anything else.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that book as well. It was amazing, and kind of a similar book that I think is it's kind of similar and really great is the autobiography from Sam Walton. I think it's called Made in America.
Okay.
That one's also really,
Nice.
really, really incredible. Thank you so much, Gauthier, for coming on. If people want to kind of follow what you're doing and get in touch, what's the best place to do that?
Just ping me on. You can ping me on LinkedIn or reach out directly on customer support in our chat, and I'll make sure to come back to you.
Right, I'll add your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Like I said, thank you so much for coming on. Best of luck with everything. It's going to be really exciting to follow you and follow yours and Perlego's journey and what you guys have coming out next.
Pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening. You can find all episodes of The Growth Pod on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.